Welcome. Thank you everyone for coming. My name's Abe Taylor. I'm the CTO of ITC Secure, who some of you may know. I'm joined by Dara McDermott, who's the Managing Director of JT. And JT, for those of you that don't know, is I'll let Dara go into some more detail, but it's a full service telco telecommunications provider based on the Channel Islands. And we were just talking actually before we started, by full service I mean everything from fiber to the majority I think now of premises in certainly on Jersey, Dara, and data center services and WAN and telephony and everything in between. And so these are JT are a partner of ours of ITC's. We work together on a number of projects, and I'm really interested to get Dara's view on the main theme of the event today. That it's a rethink, not a restart. And I guess it would be very tempting to say, with all that's happened with the pandemic, but also with the UK specifically with Brexit as well, that we kind of have to burn some stuff down and start again from the ground. But I think, Dara, you agree that actually we're at a position of rethinking what we do rather than starting from scratch and going again.
I think that's the case. A restart almost suggests that we've done everything wrong and we need to start again. And actually there's a lot that's been done right. There's a lot of learnings to gain from that experience. So I think it's a matter of kind of looking at the learnings, the changed world that we live in, and building from there. So that's why I think the title of Rethink rather than Restart is far more appropriate. But you talk about kind of JT, and you're right. We've rolled out kind of full fiber across Jersey to all premises, and in the process of continuing our fiber rollout in Guernsey, but have the whole suite of telecommunication services that you'd expect from an incumbent and kind of forward-looking organization. And that being the case, the security aspect is fundamentally important to us. Probably from two perspectives is how I think of it. First of all, we provide a lot of services to our customers, over those connections. And there's an understandable expectation that the network we're providing is secure. So from a provider perspective, we need to ensure that's the case. But also, we're an operator and a business in our own right. So we hold a lot of personal data. We hold a lot of subscriber intelligence. We heard Paddy McGuinness talking earlier on about a CEO inbox being hacked or copied. We have the same concerns that we need to be alert to. So we need to protect our own business. So I always think of it, when you're an incumbent operator or a provider of telecommunication services, you have one hat that says, being careful about protecting the network that you provide, and second of all, making sure your own house doesn't burn down. So we got to protect our own business operations on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis.
So you have to start from this position of inherent security in the underlying infrastructure before you even start going to connect customers to their services and data, I guess. But do you find that now that a lot of customers, or certainly many of the people we speak to, the data, the asset, the application is moving away from their own premises, right? It's going over networks like JT's and ending up in a cloud environment somewhere, software as a service, or a data center elsewhere. Do you telcos are becoming even more critical in terms of the provision of inherent security. But as that service provider, the connection to the outside world, do customers come to you as a telco and ask for help with security? Is it their first thought? Is it something they've recently started to do? I mean, how do they view you?
Yeah, we're seeing more of it. So there's always a kind of unless you have a certain level of credibility in the market, should I say, you're not even going to be offered a tender. So there's a kind of public perception, a public persona that's important for JT. So to ensure that we're almost invited to the table for some of these bigger tenders and customer engagement. And then when you get there, you got to make sure that you can put forward, a kind of a pitch that says, you know what, we have credibility because of these things. Okay, and our approach has been bulk up, within JT. So we have our own experts, resources that are involved in this area, but also, the Channel Islands is a relatively small jurisdiction. So we're always going to need somebody else to rely on for kind of trusted partners, and that's where the relationship with ITC is absolutely crucial. You also heard Paddy McGuinness talk earlier on about having that wraparound you referred to, and by wraparound it was those people that in the event of there being an issue, in the event of there being a requirement that you can go to, and that's why we some time ago, when looking at how do we get that resource that we see coming down the track, how do we make sure that when customers want it, we don't at that point scratch our heads. So we put time in and a lot of effort in advance in looking across the landscape, and chose ITC because they came top of the pile in terms of looking at who we could work with and how a relationship might develop. So that wraparound that Paddy referred to is crucial, and kind of the JT approach of having the resources locally, so that we can rely on those, but also having the wider ITC, the Security Operations Center, the monitor and detect arrangements, and all of those things, which you do for the kind of as part of your general business, how that can be brought to bear on the services that we offer to our customers here in the Channel Islands.
Yeah, and I think it's worked. It's worked so well because what we've discovered is that the partnerships between, so if you forget the specifics of ITC and JT for a second, the partnership between a security company and a telco is kind of an ideal, gives you an ideal vehicle to take security to customers, right? Because the telco is effectively moving bits and bytes around and has access to the kind of data, the kind of events, the kind of logs that a security company needs to be able to see in order to decide whether something bad is happening, or to give a view on how secure or otherwise those connections are. And so working with yourselves, I mean, we've the major contract with Government of Jersey, States of Jersey on the island that we run together, on the islands that we run together, has been, I think, we've learned a huge amount, and it's been very successful because of that partnership. You provide the wide area networks, you provide the method for actually moving the data about, and you have the expertise locally, and working with us, I think, has made it much easier for us to take a much more reactive, dynamic service together to that customer than if we were to come in and have no interaction at all with the telco and the people providing all the networks. It's I think it's made the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, or whatever the
I think that's right. I also think from a jurisdictional perspective, again, I think at it from two perspectives. One being there's this kind of selfish interest of JT that I mentioned earlier on in making sure our house is in order. But second of all, there's a wider jurisdictional point, and JT is 100% government owned, and in light of the kind of size of jurisdictions, it's kind of that rising tide analogy of if the jurisdictions do well, incumbent kind of telco, electricity, those kind of utility providers do well. So it's in our interest to make sure that what's in place not only serves our own selfish purpose, which it must, but also the wider jurisdictional purpose. And that's why the work we've done across Jersey and across Guernsey has been so important, and kind of relied upon as the governments in both jurisdictions make sure they're protected and make sure they build on their credentials in that area.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some. Well, I found interesting. I'd never done any work with Channel Islands before, you guys, and it's you have some really interesting jurisdictional and regulatory conditions, I think, and also you have this interesting situation where you have a lot of household name financial companies with operating out of the Channel Islands as well, and it's kind of a microcosm of all kinds of sectors and segments, all in this relatively small geographical area, and the protection. I think it gives us the opportunity to say, look, we working with you guys, the protection of all of those organizations, be it public sector, private sector, finance, whatever, it gives us the ability to offer a picture of collaborative, collective defense, which again is greater than doing work individually for each customer, and would be hard to do if you were trying to do it on, Europe scale or or maybe even a UK scale. I think there are opportunities in the Channel Islands to innovate. I don't know if you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and also the finance industry, legal industry, trust work. That there is obviously quite a lot of that across the Channel Islands. And people involved in those businesses are normally have a higher awareness of governance responsibilities, and rightly and understandably pride themselves on taking it seriously. So it's really helpful. Sometimes you're pushing at an open door where you talk about cyber risks, where you talk about what are people doing about them. They're keen to acknowledge that yes, it is on their agenda. Yes, they are. They're keen to be able to show that they are doing something about it, and so that activity, helps support the fact that I think we've taken the right approach in this area by, as I say, bulking up our own credentials and using trusted partners as that kind of wraparound that Paddy referred to.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Darrow. And I think and this session is being recorded also as well. We'll publish the links later. I mean, so one question we had earlier on, which I just put to you in the time we have left, is which I think is related to what we were just talking about, actually. So, do you think that cybersecurity is taken seriously enough in the Channel Islands compared to the rest of the world? Is the question.
Yeah, and I think I did in part answer that a second ago, with by virtue of saying it, the number of conversations I have about it are significant, and they're at a senior level, at board level. So I see that it is being taken seriously. We have evidence of that. Now we got to always see it through to doing something about it, and making sure that a positive decision is taken one way or the other. Because sometimes I do think that actively deciding not to do something, for good reasons, is an acceptable consideration. It's an acceptable outcome, because you might be okay given the industry you're in, given the nature of the modern technology you use that has the protections built in, and how you arrange your services. So it always depends on the specific case that you're dealing with.
It's that minefield of navigating between, like all boards have to do, what's our appetite for risk? What am I prepared to expose myself to in terms of risk, compared to how much money am I prepared to spend, right? And that's, I think that's the bulk of our job as a security consultancy, is to help customers understand where those risks are coming from and what the reality of those risks to them in context is, because one person's risk is another person's irrelevance. And that is hard. Working that out is hard, but I think that's where the secret lies with it, actually.
Yeah, and this stuff is tricky. This stuff is really tricky, and ever changing. Which is why I take confidence from your guys, the kind of mentioned the security operations center you have, and the how active I see you on a day-to-day basis. Because if you're not active on a day-to-day basis, you're a day behind.
Yeah, absolutely. We always used to, I think we're better than we used to be as an industry, but we always used to start from behind anyway, right? We were already some hours, maybe days behind the bad guys. I think that's changing. We're maybe just over their shoulder now. But yeah, you're right. It's tricky. I think we need to wrap up there, Dara. So thank you very much for joining us and for speaking at our event. We really appreciate it. Attendees, if you go back to the main plenary now, you should see a button on the right-hand side of your screen, I think. And thank you all very much for attending. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aid.
Thanks, Dara.